In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to do solving cube equations. So when solving cube equation, the first thing that you need to do is you need to check whether you can factorize by grouping. And to do that, what you need to do is you need to check the coefficient of x cubed and x squared. Then you need to check the coefficient of x and the constant, which is 16. If the coefficients, when you divide this 2 and this 2 together, if you get the same value, then you can use grouping. So let's do that. If we take the coefficient of x cubed, the coefficient of x cubed is 1. So you're going to say 1 divided by the coefficient of x squared is 1. So 1 divided by 1 is going to give you 1. Then we're going to check here. If you take the coefficient of x, it's going to be 16. I'm just going to ignore the negative sign. Then the coefficient, the constant is going to be what? It's going to be 16 again. 16 divided by 16 is going to give you what? It's going to give you 1. So we see the fact that when we divide the coefficient of x cubed and x squared, we get 1. And also when we divide the coefficient of 16 and the coefficient of x and just the constant, we get 1. Since it's the same thing, we can use grouping. So let's do that part. So when we group, we're going to group the 1 in yellow and the 1 in red together. Just to make it simple for this example, I'm going to do it on the side. So let's take the 1 in yellow. The 1 in yellow is x cubed plus x squared. What's the common factor here? If you don't know how to find the common factor, I have a video about that. But here we take the one with the lowest degree, which is in our case here is x squared. So if we say equals to x squared, open bracket, here what's going to be left is just x. Then here what's going to be left is what is 1. So you're going to say plus 1. And that's for the first part. Then let's do this one using common factor outside. So if we have negative 16, right? Here when we take it out, we do include the negative 16, right? Negative 16x minus 16. What do we see? Our common factor here, it's negative 16. If we take out negative 16, you're going to have negative 16, open bracket. Whenever you take out something that has a negative, the signs inside the bracket are going to change. What's going to be remaining? Just x. And here, this, when you take out negative 16, what's going to happen is you're going to have plus 1. So this, you're done taking the common factor. What do we see? We see the fact that x plus 1 and x plus 1 is common. Meaning when we put it back here, what's going to happen is we're going to have another common factor. So what you're going to do now is we're going to write this part, the answer, which is you're going to say here in yellow, you're going to substitute it with here. So you're going to say x squared, open bracket, x plus 1. Then you're going to take this one, which is going to be negative 16, open bracket, x plus 1. Then that's what you have, right? Then we see the fact that, as I said, we have x plus 1 is a common factor. Let's take that out. So you're going to have x plus 1, then open bracket. What's going to be left when you take out x plus 1? You're going to be left with x squared minus 16. And again, if you do not understand how to find how to take out the common factor, I have a video about it. So you can check it down the description, or I'm going to have an eye on top. So what do we see here? We see the fact that we have factorized this, but this one is it's a difference of 2 squares. Let me highlight it. This one is a difference of 2 squares. Also, I have a video on that. So if you don't understand the difference of 2 squared, you can actually check the video that I have on it. A difference of 2 squares is that you need to have 2 terms, and both of them need to have different signs, which is one needs to be positive and the other one needs to be negative, and they both need to be perfect square root. So let's check whether they're perfect square root. Square root of x squared is going to give you x. So x squared is a perfect square root. Then square root of 16 is going to give you what? 4. That meaning 16 is a perfect square root. Then what you do, you take the ones that you just found inside the square root, then do brackets. So that's what I'm going to do. You're going to say x plus 1, open bracket. Then you're going to have 2 brackets. Then it's going to be what? X here and x here. Taking the x here. Then you're going to say 4 here. Then you're going to say 4 here. Then you're going to say plus or minus. Since this is solving cubic equations, right? This is equated to 0. This whole thing is equated to 0. So the 0, you need to say equals to 0 here. equals to 0 here, and equals to 0 here. So what's going to happen is, since we're solving cubic equations, we need to solve for each x value. So what happens is you equate each bracket by 0. So you're going to say x plus 1 is equals to 0. Then you're going to say x plus 4 is equals to 0. Or you're going to say what? X minus 4 is equals to 0. Then we're gonna take the one without the x to the other side. So we solving for x. So you're gonna say x, when you take this positive 1 to the other side, it's going to become negative 1. So that's our first value. Or when we take this 4 to the other side, it's going to be x is equals to negative 4, because it's positive this side. When you take it to the other side, it's going to become what? Negative. Or when we take this negative 4 to the other side, it's going to be positive. So it's going to be x is equals to positive 4. And this will be your final answers. Okay, this is number 2. Before we start number 2, it's the same as number 1. I'm just doing another question so that we do an extra example just to check whether you catch the drift, if you didn't catch it the first time. But if you want to pause and actually do the question on your own, you can definitely do that. So you can pause now and do the question, then we'll continue with the solution. So what's going to happen is, the first thing when you start with grouping, when you have any cubic question, right, what you do is check whether, as I said, x cubed, the coefficient of x cubed and the coefficient of x1 are going to be equals to the coefficient of x and the constant. Then if they equal, then you can use grouping. So let's do that. What's the coefficient of x cubed? Is going to be 1. Then what's the coefficient of x squared? Is going to be 2. So 1 divided by 2 is going to be equals to 1 over 2. So that's okay. So that's what we have for this one. Then let's move to the red one. The coefficient of x is 25. So if you say 25, then the constant is 50. So divided by 50. What's 25? 25 over 50 is going to give you a half. Then what do we see? We see the fact that this and this are equal, meaning you can use what? Grouping to factorize this question. So let's do that. So as I did with the previous one, I'm going to write it on the side so that it's clear and you can see it. Again, if you do not understand, you can use I have a video on common factors to explain the concept. We have x cubed, the yellow one, plus 2x, and we need to take out a common factor here. What's a common factor here? X squared, sorry. What's the common factor here? We see the fact that is x, so we're going to take that out. Open bracket, what's going to be left here is just x, and what's going to be left here is going to be plus 2. So we're done with this one. Let's move to the red one, which is negative 25x minus 50 x. So what's the common factor here? We see that the common factor here is negative 25. So if we say negative 25, remember, if you take out a common factor with the negative, the one that's going to remain in the bracket, they're going to change their sign. If they were negative, they're going to be positive. If they were positive, they're going to become negative. So here what's going to be remaining is just x, and here it's going to be plus 2. So this is what you're going to have. Then you're going to substitute here. Our answer is going to be this 2. So it's going to be x squared, open bracket, x plus 2, then minus 25, open bracket, x plus 2 is equals to 0. You see something? We see the fact that we have what? X plus 2 and x plus 2 as being a common factor. So we can take that out as a common factor. So let's do that. It's going to be x plus 2 inside a bracket, open bracket. What's going to be remaining? It's going to be x squared minus 25. Close bracket is equals to 0. Then we have a difference of 2 squares. When we have a difference of 2 squared, what we do is that both terms, they need to be 2 terms, right? Both with different signs, and they need to be what? Perfect square root. So let's check whether they perfect square root. If we say x squared, it's going to give us x, the square root of x squared. Then the square root of 25 is going to give us 5. So here, the two, when we open two bracket, we're going to have x and 5. So let's do that. If we say x plus 2, open two brackets, then you're going to have x here, you're going to have x here, then we're going to have 5 here, we're going to have 5 here equals to 0, plus or minus. Since we're solving cubic equations, we need to equate our brackets by 0. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to say x plus 2, the first bracket, is equals to 0, or the other one is x plus 5 is equals to 0, or the last one is going to be what? X minus 5 is equals to 0. Then take it to the other side, so it's going to be x is equals to negative 2, or x is equals to negative 5, or x is equals to positive 5. And this will be your final answer. Now, let's look at number 3, right? Let's say you're given an equation like this, x cubed plus 2x squared minus 19x minus 20 is equals to 0, right? And then what you do is first, we check whether we can factorize by grouping. So let's do that. So if we say for this one, if the coefficient of x cubed is 1 and the coefficient of what? Of x squared is 2. So it's going to be 1 over 2. Then here, the coefficient of x is 19 and the coefficient of constant, there's no coefficient, the constant is going to be 20. What do we see? We see the fact that this and this are not equals. They're not equal to each other. So now what we're going to use the method called synthetic division. So let's do that. First of all, we need to find the factors that are going to go in here. When we substitute them inside, you get a 0. So let's do that part. And I'm going to show you guys an easier way to actually find them by just looking at the constant, which is, in our case, is 20, right? We're going to need to find the factors of 20. So let me do it here in red. Factors of 20 is going to be 1 multiplied by 20. Then you're going to have 2 multiplied by 10. Then the last one is going to be what? 4 multiplied by 5. These are the only factors that we have for 20. Then you're going to say plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus here, plus or minus, and plus 4 and minus, right? So these are the factors. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute these factors to get which one. When we put them inside, we're going to get a 0. So let's do that. So let's do the trial and error using 1 and negative 1. So for the first one, I'm going to do it in red. If we open a bracket and we say negative 1 cubed plus 2 negative 1 squared minus 19 negative 1 minus 20, what do we get? We get a 0. If we get a 0, meaning negative 1 is one of the factors. So we can write it here on the side that x is equals to negative 1. So this is what we're going to use using the synthetic division. So let me clean this off. What you're going to do is you're going to draw an L like this. Then after drawing an L like that, here on the side, you're going to write whatever factor that you got when you substituted inside. You got a 0, which is in our case is negative 1. Then here on top, you're going to write the coefficients of each part. So in our case, the coefficient of x cubed is 1. Then the coefficient of x squared is 2. Then the coefficient of x is 9 and negative 19. Then the last one is negative 20. So here, that's the numbers that you're going to write. You're going to write 1, 2, negative 19, then negative 20. So that's what you're going to write. Then to actually use the synthetic, what we're going to do is you first drop down the first value, which is in our case is 1. Then you're going to write it here. Then you're going to take this one and multiply it by this one. So you're going to say 1 multiplied by negative 1, which is going to give you what? It's going to give you negative 1. Then the number that you get, which is negative 1, you're going to write it here. So you're going to write negative 1 here. Then what you're going to do is this 2, you're going to add them together. You're going to add 2 minus negative 1. So if you say 2 plus, negative 1, always remember in your calculator, you put it in bracket form. 2 plus negative 1, it's going to give you what? Positive 1. So the number that's going to come here is going to be positive 1. So you're going to say 1, right? Right. Then we're going to repeat the process. You're going to take this one, multiply by this one. So you're going to say 1 multiplied by negative 1, which is going to give you what? Negative 1, right? So 1 multiplied by negative 1 is going to give you negative 1. So this one, you're going to write it here. Then you're going to add this 2. So if you say negative 19 plus open bracket negative 1, what do we get? We get negative 20. So this negative 20, you're going to write it here. You're going to repeat the process. You're going to take this and negative 20 multiplied by negative 1. So you're going to say negative 20 multiplied by negative 1. And negative 20 multiplied by negative 1 is going to give us what? Positive 20. Then this positive 20 is the one that you're going to write here. Then when you're done writing it here, you're going to add them. Right, same process. So negative 20, I'm just going to write it here. Negative 20 plus 20, what's it going to give you? It's going to give you a 0. So you're going to write 0. Then that is you done using the synthetic, right? So now it's time to write our brackets. So to write your bracket, you're going to take what? You're going to take the answers that you got here. This one, this one, this one, this one, and also this one to write your bracket. I'm just going to write it on the side so that you guys can see it clearly. So the first bracket is going to be the one that you found by substituting. Then with this one, what you're going to do is you're going to reverse, right? So you're going to take this negative 1 to the other side, so this side becomes 0. So when we do that, since we have x is equals to negative 1, when you take it to the other side, since it's negative, it becomes positive. So it's going to be x plus 1 is equals to 0. This is our first bracket, right? And now we need to figure out this one. Always, this is a case of being always. This one stands for x squared. This one is this one is going to be the coefficient for x squared. This one's going to be the coefficient for x, and this one's going to be a constant, which is c. So let's write this one. So it's going to be basically, because of its 1, so it's going to be 1 multiplied by x squared. So it's going to be 1 multiplied by x squared. Then here it's going to be plus 1 multiplied by x. Then the last one is minus 20. So you're going to have here x squared plus x minus 20. So that's what you're going to have. So this is your other bracket. So let's write it on the side properly in red so that I don't confuse anyone. So it's going to be x plus 1 open bracket. It's going to be what? X squared plus x minus 20 is equals to 0. Then we see something. We see the fact that this part we can actually factorize it, and we need to factorize that. I also have a video on factorizing a trinomial, so I'll link that up too. So factorizing a trinomial, right? I'm just gonna do it separately. If we have x squared plus x minus 20, then what we do is we need to look at the c, that we need to find their factors. We know the factors of negative 20 is 1 multiplied by 20. Then it's going to be negative, it's negative 1 multiplied by 20. Then it's going to be positive 1 multiplied by negative 20. Then the second one is going to be what? Negative 2 multiplied by 10. And positive 2 multiplied by negative 10. And the last one is going to be negative 4 multiplied by positive 5. And the last one, it's going to be positive 4 multiplied by 5. So that's the factors of 20. We know the fact that we need to find factors such that when we multiply them together, we get 20. And when we add them together, we need to get positive 1. So let's check whether when we add them together, are we going to get positive 1. This one, you're not going to get it. When we add them together, this one, you're not going to get it. This one, 2, and this one, 2. Let's look at the last two, right? We need to get a positive 1. If we say negative 4 plus 5, what do we get? We get a positive 1. So this is going to be our factors, negative 4 and positive 5. So this is going to be basically equals to x minus 4, close bracket, it's going to be x plus 5. So this is going to be our factors. So let me clear the screen so I can write the answer properly. So from this, we know the fact that from this question, our answer is going to be what? It's going to be x plus 1, open bracket, this one, before we factorize it, it's going to be x squared, right, plus x minus 20, close bracket is equals to 0. Then we done factorizing this one, so it's going to be x plus 1, open bracket is going to be x minus 4. Then the last one is going to be x plus 5, right? Is equals to 0. Then we're going to solve for x. We know the fact that x plus 1 is equals to 0, or x minus 4 is equals to 0, or the last one is going to be x plus 5 is equals to 0. Then we're solving for x, so we're going to take the the numbers to the other side. So it's going to be x is equals to -1, or it's going to be x is equals to +4, or the last one is going to be x is equals to -5, and this will be your final answer. So let's do another question again with this one. Since it's similar to number 3, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you can pause you can pause, then do the question, then unpause, then you'll see the solution and how I did it, so that you can check whether you understand or not. So let's do this one. Since it's similar to number 3, we all know the fact that there's no common factor. So we're not going to factorize by grouping. So there isn't any common factors here. So what we're going to do is we're going to right away go to the synthetic, right? But the first thing first is that we need to find what? We need to find the factors of 24, right? So the factors of 24 is 1 multiplied by 24. Then the second one is going to be 2 multiplied by 12. Then the third one is going to be 3 multiplied by 8. Then we have 4 multiplied by 6. And these are going to be your factors, right? Then you're going to say plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus. And it's going to be plus or minus here. Also plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus, plus or minus. Then we're going to use those factors to check, do a trial on which one, when we substitute it, we're going to get what? A 0. Very important, this is equals to 0. Very important that when you do that, Anna, we start with the one with the lowest number. So we're going to start with plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3. We're going to go downwards, then we're going to basically do it from smallest to biggest. So let's do that. So we're going to start with -1. So I'm going to do it in red. Just going to do it here. It's going to be open bracket -1, close bracket, plus cubed, then open bracket is going to be -1 all squared, plus 26, open bracket -1, plus 24 is equals to. And another tip is that when you substitute in the calculator, please don't forget to put it inside the bracket, because if you don't do that, your answer is going to be distorted and you're not going to get the right values, right? And you're not going to know which factors work. So moving on, when we punch this into the calculator, what you're going to get is a +6. So +6 is not equals to 0. So this one is not the right one. So now let's go back and substitute. Let's change this negative into a positive and see what do we get. And when we do that, we get a +60. Remember, use your bracket. Brackets are your best friends, right? So you're going to get a +60. So -1 and +1 does not work. So we need to move to +2 and -2. So let's do that. So I'm just going to cancel here inside the bracket. Then it's going to be what? -2 first. We're going to start with -2 and check that one. So when we substitute -2, we're going to get a 0. So -2 is going to give us a 0. Remember, brackets are your best friend. Don't forget to put in the bracket. I know I'm saying this too much. So we see the fact that when we substitute -2, it's going to give us 0. So we're going to say here x is equals to -2. So this is the number that's going to go here. So now what we're going to do is we need to find the coefficients so that they can come here. The coefficient of x cubed is 1 here. Then the coefficient of x squared is 9. Then the coefficient of x is 26, and the constant is 24. So you're going to write those numbers here. It's going to be 1, 9, 26, and 24. Then your factor that you got is -2. Then what you're going to do is we're going to drop the first number, which is in our case is 1. Then we're going to write it here. Then what you're going to do is you're going to say 1 multiplied by -2. So you're going to say 1 multiplied by -2. It's going to give you what? -2. Then this -2, you're going to write it here. Then you're going to add the 2. So you're going to say 9 plus open bracket -2. It's going to give you what? It's going to give you 7. So the 7, you're going to write it down here. So you're going to give you 7, and you're going to write it down here. Repeat the process. You're going to say 7 multiply. So you're going to say 7 multiplied by negative 2. And you're going to get what? You're going to get negative 14. So you're going to get 7 multiplied by negative 2. You're going to get negative 14. Then that negative 14, you're going to write it here. Then you're going to add the 2. So you're going to say 26 plus open bracket negative 14. And that's going to give you positive 12. So here, that's where you're going to write positive 12. Repeat the process. You're going to say 12 multiplied by negative 2, which is going to give you 24. Then the 24 is going to come here. Then you're going to add this 2. When you add this 2, when you say 24, if you say 24 plus negative 24, what you're going to get a 0. So that's what's going to come here. Remember something. Remember, as I told you, that this one represents the coefficient of x squared, and this one represents the coefficient of x, and this is just a constant, right? This one, first we need to change it. It's going to go to the other side, so it's going to be x plus 2 is equals to 0. So that's going to be our first bracket. So it's going to be open bracket x plus 2. Then this one is going to be x squared, because it's multiplied by 1, plus, since this is positive, 7x plus 12, close bracket. Then now we need to factorize this one. Let me clean this side so that we can factorize this one. So to factorize this one, we need to find the effect of c is going to be 1 multiplied by 12. Then it's going to be 3 multiplied by 4. Then we need to add them together so that we get a positive, what? 7, right? So if we add 3 plus 4, what do we get? We get a 7. So these are going to be your factors. Again, if you do not understand this section, I have a video about it. So I'll link it up so that you guys can watch it. So now what's going to be, this is equals to 0. So what's going to happen is we have 2 brackets here. It's going to be x plus 2, open bracket. It's going to be what? X plus 3. Then close bracket is going to be x plus 4. Taking those 2 factors here and there, and taking their signs. This is positive and positive, right? Then this is going to be equals to 0. So now, since we're solving cubic equations, we need to solve for them, right? So we're going to equate so we're going to equate every bracket by 0. So you're going to have x plus 2 is equals to 0. Then the second one, or we're going to say x plus 3 is equals to 0. And the last one, or x plus 4 is equals to 0. Then x is going to be equals to negative 2, or x is going to be equals to negative 3, or x is going to be equals to negative 4. And this will be your final answers. So now let's do one example where x cubed is negative. So when we have x cubed as being negative, we need to make sure the fact that it's turned into positive. So let's do it here. I just want to do it in another color. I think I can do it under here. So let's do that. We take out negative 1 as a common factor, open bracket. This whole thing are going to change the sign. So this one's going to become positive. Since this one is negative, it's going to become positive. This one's going to become negative. This one's going to be negative. So let's write them. It's going to be x cubed plus x squared minus 22x minus 40 is equals to 0. Then if we divide both sides, if we have negative 1, open bracket, x cubed plus x squared, right, minus 22x minus 40, this is equals to 0, and or close bracket, this is equals to 0. Since it's equals to 0, we can divide both sides by negative 1. And when we divide by negative 1, the negative 1s are going to cancel out. So you're going to have x cubed plus x squared minus 22x minus 40 is going to be equals to 0. So this is going to be our new one. So I'm going to replace it here. So this is the new one when we took out x negative 1 as being a common factor. So now what's going to happen is we need to check whether can we factorize by grouping. So let's do that. If we take the coefficient of x cubed, which is 1, divided by the coefficient of x squared is 1, then if we take the coefficient of x is 22 and the constant, which is 40. We see the fact that these two are not equals together, so we need to use synthetic division to solve this question. With synthetic division, what we need to do is we need to find the factors of 40. so that when we substitute we get 0. So we have 1 multiplied by 40. That's the first one. Then the second one is 2 multiplied by 20. Then the other one is 4 multiplied by 10. Then the last one is going to be 5 multiplied by 8. Then you're going to say plus minus, plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. Then you're going to say plus minus here, plus minus here, plus minus here, and plus minus here. Then we're going to try each factor and check when we substitute, do we get a 0? The one that we get a 0 is going to be the factors that we use. So let's do that. If we say open bracket, the first one, which is negative 1 to the power cubed plus negative 1 all squared minus 22, open bracket, negative 1 minus 40, what do we get? Negative 18, right? So we see the fact that negative 18 is not equals to 0, so we need to try other factor, which is plus 1. See, it's plus or minus 1, so it's going to be plus 1 now. So let's try that. And with positive 1, what do we get? We get to 60, which is negative 60 is not equals to 0. So we need to try other factors. So now let's try 2, negative 2 first. Then we see when we substitute negative 2, we get a 0, right? So we know that x is equals to negative 2. So this is the one that's going to come here. Then now let's find the coefficient of each term here. So the coefficient of x cubed is 1. The coefficient of x squared is 1. The coefficient of x is negative 22. And the constant is negative 40. So we're going to have 1, 1, negative 22, and negative 40. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the 1 here. When we drop the 1, we're going to have 1 here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say 1 multiplied by negative 2. 1 multiplied by negative 2, we're going to get what? Negative 2. So this negative 2 is going to come here. Then you're going to add the 2 together. If you say 1 plus negative 2, what do you get? You're going to get negative 1. So this is the answer that you're going to get here. Repeat the process. You're going to say what? 1, negative 1 multiplied by negative 2, which is going to give you a positive 2. So the positive 2, you're going to write it here. Then you're going to add the 2 together. If you say negative 22 plus 2, what do we get? We're going to get a negative 20. So this, the negative 20 is going to come here. If you say negative 20 multiplied by negative 2, what do you get? You get a positive value. So you're going to get a positive 40. So you're going to have 40 here. Then you're going to add the 2 together. If you say negative 40 plus 40 is going to be equals to 0. So this is going to be 0 here. Remember again the fact that this is the coefficient for x squared. Always this is the coefficient of x, and this is going to be your constant, right? So here what you're going to have, you're going to have 1 multiplied by x squared is going to be x squared. Then negative 1 multiplied by x is going to be minus x. Then the last one is going to be minus 20. So let's change this one. When we change that one, what do we get? We get the fact that it's going to be x. Take it to the other side, plus 2. So your 2 brackets now, it's going to be x plus 2, close bracket, x squared minus x minus 20. It's equals to 0. So let me rewrite it properly. So now what we're going to have is we're going to have to factorize this. So what are the factors for 20? It's going to be 1 multiplied by 20, right? It's going to be negative 1 multiplied by 20. Then the other one is going to be positive 1 multiplied by negative 20 because we're dealing with the negative sign. Then the other one is going to be what? It's going to be negative 2 multiplied by 10. Then it's going to be positive 2 multiplied by negative 10. Then the last one is going to be what? It's going to be negative 4 multiplied by 5 and positive 4 multiplied by negative 5, right? So we want so that when we add the 2 together, we get what? We get a negative 1, right? So this one's not going to work. This one's not going to work when we add them together. This one 2, this one 2. Let's look at the last two. If we say negative 4 plus 5, what do we get? We get a positive 1. So this one doesn't work. But if we say positive 4 plus negative 5, what do we get? We get a negative 1. So this is going to be our factors. So what's going to happen here, it's going to be open bracket x plus 2, rewrite it the way it is. Then you're going to open 2 brackets. Then you're going to say x here, x here, then you're going to have a plus 4, then you're going to have a negative 5. It's equals to 0. So since we're solving the equation, let me erase this. We need to equate everything by 0. So it's going to be x plus 2 is equals to 0, or x plus 4 is equals to 0, or the last one is x minus 5 is equals to 0. So x is going to be equals to negative 2, or x is going to be equals to negative 4, and the last one, or x is going to be equals to positive 5. So this will be your final solutions. So now let's look at the last question, right? So the last question, we see something different, is that we do not have x squared, or coefficient of x squared, right? So we know the fact that we need to use sympathetic division because we don't have x squared, so we can't divide. But again, is that wherever there is x squared here, when we write the coefficient, it's going to be 0. So B, let me just clarify something, right? We know the fact that the basic form for x cubed is going to be what? Let's say it's ax cubed, right? Plus bx squared plus cx plus d. So what we given here, we given this one, but we're not given this one, but we given this one and this one. So whenever you're not given one of them, which is you need to write them in order, right? Whenever you're not given one of the coefficient, or it's not inside the equation, like in our case we don't have x squared, here we're gonna replace here at the bottom by 0. So we always replace the one that's not given by 0. So let's say we were not given x, the coefficient for x. This one was not given, right? This one was going to be also replaced by 0. Okay, since that's out of the way, let's solve this question. So we do the normal thing that we've been doing. We need to find the factors of the last term, which is 30, right? So in our case, we know the fact that we have 1 multiplied by 30. That's the first one. The second one is going to be what? It's going to be 2 multiplied by 15. And the third one is going to be 3 multiplied by 10. Then the last one is going to be 5 multiplied by 6. This is going to be plus or minus, 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 then plus or minus, right? Then same routine, we're gonna substitute each factor to check which one is going to give us 0. So let's do that. Let me do it in red here. It's going to be negative 1. We start with the first one, which is plus or minus negative 1 cubed minus 19 open bracket negative 1 plus 30. Let's check what that gives us, and this gives us a positive 48. So positive 48 is not equals to 0. So now let's change it into positive. When we substitute positive, we're going to get a positive 12, which does not work. We need a 0, right? So now let's substitute 2 inside the brackets. So it's going to be negative 2 first. When we substitute negative 2, we get a positive 60. So now let's try a positive 2. Then when we substitute a positive 2, what do we get? We get a 0. So we know the fact that x is going to be equals to positive 2. So this is the 2 that's going to come here. So let me clean this off now because we're done with that. Now let's find the coefficient for each term. So the coefficient of x cubed is what? It's positive 1. This one's going to be negative 19, and this one's going to be 30. But remember, we need the coefficient of x squared right here. So the first one is going to be 1. Since we don't have x squared here, it's going to be 0. Then it's going to be negative 19. Then here it's going to be positive 30. So now what we're going to do is we're going to drop out 1. Then we're going to say 1 multiplied by 2, which is going to give us 2. So it's going to be 2 here. Then we're going to add them together. It's going to be 0 plus 2, which is going to give us 2. Then you're going to write 2 here, right? Then you're going to repeat the process. You're going to say 2 multiplied by positive 2, which is going to give us a positive 4, which is going to go here. Then you're going to say negative 19 plus 4, which is going to give us a what? A negative 15, right? Which is going to come here. Then you're going to say negative 15 multiplied by a positive 2 is going to give us a negative 30, which is going to come here. Then you're going to add them together. So you're going to say 30 minus 30, 30 plus open bracket minus 30 is going to give us 0. So we're going to have 0 here. So now we know the fact that this is the coefficient of x squared. This is our constant, which is coefficient of x, and this is our constant 15. So now let's write this on the other side. So when we write it on the other side, what do we have? What we have is we're gonna have open bracket. We have x is equals to positive 2. Take it to the other side. It's going to be x minus 2 is equals to 0. First bracket. So it's going to be x minus 2. Another bracket that's going to be 1 multiplied by x squared is going to be x. 2 multiplied by x is going to be plus 2x. Then the last one is minus 15 is equals to 0. Then what we're going to have is we need to factorize this. We need to find the factors of 15, which is 1 multiplied by 15. Since it's negative, it's going to be negative 1 multiplied by 15. Then it's going to be what? Positive 1 multiplied by negative 15. Then the other one is going to be what? It's going to be 3 multiplied negative 3 multiplied by positive 5. Then the other one is going to be what? It's going to be positive 3 multiplied by negative 5. So this one we know the fact that we need factors so that when we add them together we get a positive 2, right? But we know this one's not going to give us a positive 2. This one's not going to give us a positive 2. So let's check the last ones. So if we say negative 3 plus 5 is going to give us a positive 2. So these are the factors. So these are the factors that we're going to use. So we're going to write our answer. We're going to say open bracket x minus 2. Then open 2 brackets. Then you're going to write x here. Then you're going to say the factors that we picked, which is negative 3 and positive 5. And this is going to be equals to 0. Then we're going to equate everything by 0. So it's going to be x minus 2 is equals to 0, or x minus 3 is equals to 0, or the last one is going to be x plus 5 is equals to 0. So we write the final answer is going to be x is going to be equals to positive 2, or x is going to be equals to positive 3, or x is going to be equals to negative 5. And this will be your final answers.